What's going on, guys? Super Insane 18 here, and although last week I showed you my personal favorite new variant for Tearlament with the toy vendor stuff, I figured I might as well show you what you are probably going to see as the more mainstream build. So let's go ahead and show you guys what to expect from Tearlament moving into this list. Here we go. Alright, so as we know, Tearlament received a pretty big hit on the new ban list, so we are playing just one of each of the fusion names, with one Merly, one Havness, one Shiren. Unfortunately, that is all that is allowed, but as you saw in my previous video, and as you're going to see moving forward, this realistically isn't the end of the world for Tearlament. Tearlament is still going to very much be a top contending deck. We then have two copies of Rhinoheart. Even though it is a very good normal summon, it is not the best normal summon in the deck. That spot is reserved for something a little bit later, and you guys probably already know what it is if you saw my last video. We are playing three copies of Tearlament's Cash Tira. This card is very good because it is a pseudo replacement for Havness, obviously not as strong. You are able to still play on turn 0 with this card at the cost of another tier monster, and granted, because you have less names and less millers, your chances of hitting those off of your 3 mills aren't as strong either, but it is still something that is possible, so just keep that in mind. You're probably better off saving it until your turn, but in a pinch it does come up. We are playing two copies of Cash Tira Fenrir. This is so that we can search for the Tearlament's Cash Tira. Since it is a Cash Tira in name, obviously Fenrir is able to search for it. Not just that, but Fenrir also adds an additional layer of interruption onto your end board, being able to banish a card when your opponent activates a monster effect, so it does kind of just add that little bit of strength there as well. We are playing our millers with one Agido and one Kelbeck. Unfortunately, these were hit 2-1 as well, so this is all that we are able to play. And we have our shufflers, one Keldo and one Madura. Again, thanks to the ban list, this is the maximum number that we are allowed to play, so obviously we're going to play as much as we can. Moving on to what I believe is the best normal summon in the deck, that is going to be 3 copies of Diviner of the Herald. Now, in the previous build, the reason I thought this was the best normal summon is because you were able to do things like send your millers and get going there, but this variant actually has another thing that you can do with it. You can send a Herald of Arclight from your extra deck, so a little bit of spoiler there, to search for the Ohime, the Manifested Mikanko. Now, this is what we are going to be seeing a lot of moving forward, because what this does is you can reveal it from your hand and add a Mikanko spell from your deck to your hand, and then discard a card from your hand. Now, that discard is a discard by effect, meaning you get to activate any of the Tearlaments that you have. But not just that, it is a level 6 as well, which pairs with the Diviner, which would now be a level 6, to then overlay into Beatrice, and Beatrice adds that little bit of extra consistency that the deck needs as well. Not only are we able to send things that we need engraved, like maybe we need to hit a name, that way we can fuse, or maybe we have a means to fuse, but we don't have something like King of the Swamp, which is really important. So Beatrice is just that all-encompassing Foolish Burial type card to put whatever we need in the grave, and this being a level 6 is very important. Now, you might be asking how you can summon it, but we will get to that later. So now we have our small Shadal engine. We have the one Squamata and the one Beast. Squamata just acts as another Foolish Burial to send the Beast, and Beast just allows us to add, but more importantly than that, these are our bridges into Shadal Winda. And rounding out the monsters, the most important monster, in my opinion, now is King of the Swamp. With the loss of Kit Kalos, King of the Swamp is the only way you can make cards like Royal Kalos, but not just that, you are able to make some powerhouse cards like the new Grapha Fusion as well as just adding Polymerization. You want this in your graveyard as much as possible, so you're obviously going to add as many copies into the deck as you can, because not only do you want to mill it, but even if you draw it, you can discard it to add a copy of Polymerization, and hard polying with a Tearlament name is actually really kind of broken, because you get the fusion that you get off Polymerization, and then because a Tearlament was sent to graveyard, you get to activate its effect, and it just kind of works wonders for the deck. That is it for the monsters. Onto the spells, we have a lot of one-ofs, actually. We are playing one of Foolish Burial. This card is more important than ever. We have the one copy of Polymerization for search off of the King of the Swamp, and then we are playing one of the Cash Tira field spell, the Pressured Planet Raitsoth. This is just a way to kind of get into your Unicorn, or not your Unicorn, your Fenrir, or your Tearlament Cash Tira if you need it, and it makes terraforming not as bad if you opened up something like Perlarino already, so you can go ahead, get this, get your Fenrir, special the Fenrir, get the Tearlaments, and it just kind of lets you go off. And then we are playing one copy of the Great Mikanko's Ceremony. This is how you are actually going to summon out the ritual monster. This lets you summon it ignoring its summoning conditions, so this is the spell that you're going to add off of it. So essentially the play, if you don't need your diviner to send like your millers, or if you want to just get a Beatrice on board because that's what you need, you would normal the diviner, pitch the Herald of Arclight, add the Mikanko ritual. Mikanko ritual will go ahead and reveal to add this, and then discard a card. If you get your effect, you get your effect, cool. If not, you go ahead and activate this to summon the Mikanko, ignoring its summoning conditions, and overlay the Mikanko and the now level 6 diviner into Beatrice, and then you can send whatever you want. And the last one that we have is a single copy of Terraforming. We are playing 4 field spells in this deck, so we want to make sure that we have as much access to them as possible. We are playing 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. This is really strong right now because you are able to do things like Foolish Burial the Sullik and search for any Tearlament name. More often than not, it's going to be something like Tearlament Kashtira, because then you can summon it by banishing the newly Foolish Sullik and milling 3 cards, so it's just kind of a really good 1-card starter. We are playing 2 copies of Tearlament Scream. A lot of people have bumped this to 3, but I don't think that 3 is necessary. While it is a very strong card, you don't want to brick on too many copies of it, so I think that 2 is a good number. We are playing 3 copies of Primeval Planet. Again, this is just consistency. We'll be able to add our tier names. More often than not, it's going to be either Rhinoheart or Tearlament's Kashtira, but in a pinch, if you also need to discard something from your hand, like let's say you opened up your Agido or your Kelbeck, you can go ahead and you can search for your Shiren and then discard that to get even more mills, and that is going to round out the spells onto the traps. We have the 1 copy of Meta Noise, a very strong contender for this format, just because you are able to use it to essentially Book of Moon monsters, but not just that, it sends a Tearlament name from your deck, allowing you to fuse again on your opponent's turn. And finally, we have 2 copies of Sullik. This can even potentially be bumped up to 3 because of how strong it is to either have it to discard or to send it off of the Foolish Goods, or to just have it for an additional effect negation. That is the main deck at 40 cards. Let's show you guys the extra. Now, for the extra deck, it is relatively unchanged from last week's build, but we did have to make 2 significant changes just for the way that the new Mikanko engine works, so we'll discuss that when we get there, but same as before, we are playing 1 of each of the Tearlament fusions now. We have our Welcallus and our Kaleido Heart, pretty standard. We are playing our 1 copy of Winda. This is just a powerhouse card, and we are, of course, playing the Shaddolls to make it. We have our 1 copy of Dragostapelia, because it's just a really good way to put another interruption on the field, as well as our copy of Grapha, Dragon Overlord of Darkworld. You make this with King of the Swamp, and it's essentially just an Omni-Negate, so not just that, but it turns your opponent's effects into letting you discard a card, meaning that if you have anything to activate that you can do, like let's say you have like a Shiren in hand or a Kelbeck or whatever, their effect becomes discard, so now you discard it and you get all of your stuff off of it, so it's really broken. We are playing 2 synchros. We have the 1 Herald of Arclight for the combo with the Mikanko, as well as the 1 Baron de Flor. If we are in a situation where we don't need the Mikanko, we don't need to make the Beatrice, the Diviner is still a level 6 tuner, so paired with any of our other level 4s, we are able to put a Baron on field, which does get very threatening very fast. We are playing a couple of rank 4s. We have our Abyss Dweller for the mirror match, our Baguska for if we get stopped and need to stun something, or if we just need to make an easy Zeus, as well as our Time Thief Redoer. Time Thief Redoer is a really efficient way of making sure that we can choose when we activate our Shiren. Since the discard is effect and not cost, we are able to put a Shiren under it as material, and pretty much just choose when we're fusing. Then we have a Beatrice, Lady of the Eternal, again for the Mikanko combo, as well as a Divine Arsenal Zeus. We did cut this down from 2 to 1. I'm not sure how I feel about that, because I do still think that Zeus is the best way to break an opposing Kashtira board, but we did have to make some changes. We needed room for both the Beatrice and the Arclight, so we cut one of the Zeuses. We'll see how that goes. I might try to bump it back up to 2, but the room is really tight. And that's it for the XYZs. Onto the links, we are still playing the 1 Dark the Dark Charmer for obvious reasons. We are still playing the Sprind so that we can send our Merly. And finally, we are playing the Underworld Goddess. If you watched my last video, you'll know that this is a tech to out something like Avermax, because moving into the next format, I do believe that we are going to be seeing Sprite making Avermax a lot more than it used to. So we want to be prepared and make sure we have the out, and that's the extra deck. And there you guys have it. That is going to be the more conventional Tearlament deck profile for this new format with the February 2023 ban list. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and you learned something. That is always my goal in these videos, is to bring you guys some quality competitive content. Make sure that you are up to date on all of the best builds and variants and combos and ways that you can play this game that we all love to hate and hate to love. Thank you guys so much for watching. Maybe consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting the notification bell, like, comment, share with friends, maybe support me on Patreon. I will see you guys in the next one.